welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I am so honored to be joined by Aeryon Ashlie. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to just jump into a little bit of your story and how did you start, where did you start from? And then how did you get to where you are today and the women that you're helping today and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So geez, when I was younger, I guess we kind of go back. How far back do we want to go? When I look back in my childhood, my mother was a competitive figure skating coach. My dad was a bodybuilder, kind of amateur bodybuilder. So athletics and aesthetics were always really important in our household. I was always a bigger kid, so I was homeschooled because I was kind of teased relentlessly at school. And so in that, in about 13, grade 8, my mom put me in Weight Watchers, really trying to see if she could help me out. Now, in hindsight, now she's a counselor. She views that and is mortified she made that decision. But, and at the time, she's like, oh, maybe this can help her get a grip on food. But what that really did was, as I sat there in that audience of women, it was realized, and they're all like 30 and up. I was, 13 was I'm not enough and I'm too much all in the same time. And that really became a story that I carried with me for a number of years, actually, probably till about 15 years ago. And from that, then I had a classmate talk about his sister who struggled with bulimia and anorexia. And in my little teenage brain, I thought, oh my God, this is the winning ticket. I can eat whatever I want and then I'll be thin and then I'll be popular and then people will like me. And so that really started my 25-year battle with bulimia and anorexia. And in my 20s, I then started doing fitness competitions, which became a glorified eating disorder because then people were praising me because I looked so great and I had a six pack. But what they didn't really understand is that 16 weeks I'd do a show prep. I'd be really, really good. I actually wouldn't struggle with my eating disorder because I was so in control. But the minute the show ended is when I delve back into my eating disorder habits. And that's why I kept doing show after show, because the only way I could ever find some normalcy in my day-to-day was if I was competing, right? So about 15 years ago, I kind of had my aha moment. I had been working in I own a supplement company. I've been working in the natural health space for 15 years up to that point. So I was a coach working in supplements, knew better, didn't do better, the whole thing. And my daughter almost walked in when I was purging. And that's when I really had my aha moments. I remember when I kind of raised up and looked at the mirror and I was like, holy crap, if I don't get a grip on this, this is going to be her. And so from that point on, that really became my catalyst. And I think, Anthony Robbins talks about this. You really have to have the pain over pleasure, right? And before there was nothing there that really garnered it to be so painful if I continued this habit. Yes, I knew my teeth eroded and my eyes hurt and I had sores, but on my fingers and my knuckles, but there wasn't anything substantial enough. But the idea of her following in my path really is what gave me the kind of, all right, it's time to change. Around that time, the vitamin company I'd been working for, which was one of the leading vitamin companies in Canada, sold to a larger conglomerate and I was packaged out. So not only was I faced with a complete kind of health crisis and kind of getting myself back on track, but also an identity of who do I want to be in the future. Now in that my mom is a counselor now, so I worked with her. I also really applied some of those tools and techniques I picked up when I competed. I began to have, because what I recognized with my eating disorder is it wasn't about necessarily the food. It was about control for me. It was the only time in my life when I was younger that I could have control over something. Like I could eat like crazy and my parents couldn't control me, right? And so I really began to pick up what this eating disorder was. And I began to work through that. And so when I began to come out the other end of things, I then realized my hormones, my stress levels, I needed supplementation. I needed something that was going to support myself. And nothing on the market at the time was made by a woman for women. And then I was packaged out. So then I was able to take that money they gave me and I was like, okay, this is something I feel I should do. So I rolled the dice and I started Aeryon Wellness. So we've been now around for 5 years. We are sold in the US as well, but we're in over 600 stores across Canada. And that's really become my passion, is educating women that it's not just one thing. Like for me, I always thought health was that's my size of my pants or that number on the scale. And it took a lot of work to step away from that. And I still have moments where I'm like, oh, I don't fit my pants. I'm like, oh God. Right. And I really have to be like, no, that's not what health and wellness is. Right. So I created 5 pillars, which are my brand's pillars as well. And they are the thoughts you think, the friends you keep, daily movement, nutrition, and lastly, supplementation. And then by using QR codes, we're the only company that does this. We have a complete program with every product, and we use all 5 pillars within each QR code. So you guys have Shark's Tank down there, but I was on Dragon's Den, which is our version up here, and I walked away with 3 offers in 2022 with that. So I've really been able to create a brand that I'm very proud of. And I believe we're doing some really great work, not only to educate women about those 5 pillars, but also to really have them understand that there is no magic pill and that everything takes work. And that's a constant narrative of mine when I'm speaking too, right? But yeah, that's kind of where we are today. So I've been incredibly blessed, and yeah, we're making a difference. So it makes me really happy and proud.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And there's so much I
Yeah,
want to unpack with that. And the one
yeah.
thing that really stood out to me that I think resonates with so many women, especially, is that idea of looking outside yourself, that like when I, am this way, or when I look this way, or when I have this, then I'll be happy. And it's so much the reverse, but we don't realize that until we go through some of those really hard battles of
Yeah.
recognizing that. And how did you start to turn it inward and realize that you were enough inside and that you could fill your cup within and not have to rely on those external means to do that?
I mean, I still think there's times when I have to catch myself, right? So at the end of the day, I think we're in our culture has changed so dramatically in the past 5 years, really, right? So I still think there's moments where I'm like, oh, I don't, I wish I should be here in my life, and I'm not. So there still is that where I have to kind of, take stock of it. I think the big thing is recognizing that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, right? And a lot of the time, I think when you start to feel anxiety, or if you start to feel that kind of that story percolate, is to really center and get present. Because I think with any anxiety, as I used to feel with my eating disorder, or anytime I get caught up and I'm not enough, don't have enough, I should be doing this, should be doing that, is to really bring myself back to presence and awareness, because that's where I believe everything really stems from. If you can be vitally aware of, okay, right here, right now is where I'm supposed to be. Right.
Mhm.
So there is nowhere else I can be. And the only thing I can do is do my best right now. And then I believe when I'm doing my best, that things will unfold for me exactly the way they should be. So, call it believing in the universe, call it God, whatever you want to say it. I do believe there is a greater energy force at work. And I know that that has also really helped me. I grew up in a very Christian-based family. I'm not necessarily a Christian now, but I do believe that basics of the idea that there is something greater than myself at play. I kind of like the definition. There's the book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, that I did years ago. And she has the definition for God is your good, orderly direction. So if I'm tuned into my good, orderly direction, and if I follow that, then I'm always okay. I'm always caught, and everything will always work out the way it should be. And I have that devout faith. And so I think that's been a really great way of pulling myself back in those moments where I possibly can kind of tailspin and get caught up or carried away.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much what you said just resonates to me, and that we never always have it all figured out. It's always that constant evolution and growth and like uncovering some of those things. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's
Well,
so important to hear that.
well, and
All
that's part of the fun stuff about life. I mean, when we look back, I look back at some of my most trying moments, and they're the best stories I have. And I do know, I say this to my girlfriends, because I'm single and some of my girlfriends are single. So we talk about some of the dates we've been on. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I'm like, but think of the stories we have, right? And I'm like, I had a girlfriend call me that she's like, oh my God, you're not going to believe it. I'm like, but is it a good story? And she's like, it's such a good story. And I'm like, that's what it's about. When we're 90 years old, we're going to have these stories. So friggin' collect as much as you possibly can, right? So in that, looking at it as sometimes when it may, and the other big thing I always ask myself too is, in one year, will this matter?
Mm,
I'm not even going to remember it in a year, but yet this is like, it's like, no, it's not a big deal. It'll be fine
yeah.
forward,
Yeah.
right? So
Absolutely. That is that beautiful balance of just accepting all parts of us,
yeah,
that it's not about that perfection and being on all the
yeah,
time. It's about there are some darker, deeper things within all of
yeah,
us. We have to accept those parts too, with the
yeah.
good.
And you gotta have the lows to have the highs. Otherwise, you don't appreciate the
Time.
highs. You have to have the bad days to appreciate the good days. And in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, I mean, it is like this up and
Yeah.
down. And we have a new product we're launching this month. They're like, yes, it's going to be in stock. It's going to be great. They labeled it wrong. So we have to now relabel them all. And I'm like, oh my God. Right. And in that, I was like, okay, I'm not doing brain surgery. Everybody's fine. It'll be fine. It's a pain in the butt, but
Mhm.
you know, but in that, it makes me appreciate when things go really, really easy and smooth.
100%. Yeah, it's like learning the lessons from the challenges and then also just living in the gratitude of the good things. all along the
Exactly.
way. Yeah, I love that. And I want to go into a little bit more of like talking about your five pillars, because what I love is that you have the supplements, but it's not just the supplements. You're looking at very much that holistic approach to helping people better their lives. And can
Yes.
you talk about that a little bit more, and what inspired you to add those aspects of it?
Well, the big inspiration actually came. So in Canada, we're regulated by Health Canada. So we can't just launch products and put them on the market. We
Mhm.
have to have a natural product number, which is an NPN. That's why I will only buy Canadian supplements, because we have the best in the world.
Mhm.
Sorry. But one of the reason why is because when we go to put a product to market, we actually have to send in and I'm getting to the why I did
Mhm.
the QR codes. We have to submit a certificate of analysis for every single ingredient showing the extraction. We cannot make a claim unless we use the actual dosage in the scientific research for that claim. So we can't just put a smidgen of something and say, oh, it helps with stress. No, you have to put the clinical dose that's on that scientific research. And every product in Canada has this. So that being said, I had been asked over and over again to do a metabolism support product. And I really struggled with the concept given my background with eating disorders. And I had the opportunity. There's a great MPN that came to me. One of my formulators is like, I've got this MPN. If you'd like, you can buy it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I can't do it. A metabolism like that. Just can't. Like, this is insane. I know there's no magic pill. This is ridiculous. But then I'd always get asked for it because it's one of the biggest selling portions of supplements is weight
Yeah.
loss, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
always looking for that magic pill.
Mhm.
So I remember driving over the Lionsgate Bridge here in Vancouver, and I was like, how am I gonna, like, if I get this product, how can I tell people it's not a magic pill? How can I tell people they got to do the work? And I was really racking my brain to think of ways. I'm like, maybe on the website I can give a free program because I'd done coaching and trained in fitness for so many years. And all of a sudden I went, wait a second. And it was during COVID. I'm like, I could use those QR codes. And so that's how it kind of came to be. And I was like, okay, I'll just do the one. And then we did the meal plans, the workouts. There's a video with every product explaining exactly what's in it, what it does for you. And in the video, I even say, this is not a magic pill. But what this
Mhm.
will do is it can help you with your metabolism. It can help with estrogen metabolism. But more importantly, a lot of people want to buy something. So they're kind of like, okay, I bought something. Now I'm committed to making a lifestyle change. So it can provide you with that as well. And then we went through it and I was like, I could do this with every single product. So every
Mhm.
time somebody walks away with an Aeryon Wellness product, they're not just like, well, now what? Like,
Mhm.
okay, when do I take this and what do I do? No, because you have to change all of that, right? It has to, for holistic health, to get the results you want in any health capacity. You talk to any doctor about anything, they'll be like, well, you got to eat whole foods and have the fiber and to get sleep and manage your stress. Like it's all that together, no matter what. So in that we really found a way in which we could include each of those with every single product. So every single product, be it even our vaginal lubricant, has a meal plan with it. So
Mhm.
it's been something that we've had remarkable feedback from. Every year we change the menus, we add more information because there's constantly new data and info coming out every single like day pretty well on scientists and scientific research towards each health condition. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I love that. And I know I love about that is like you take something that was challenging for you with the eating disorder and having that depth and trying to maintain that integrity with that. And then here comes like blossoms this new idea and this new
Yeah,
way of it being, it almost becomes that gift of like the
yeah.
insight of understanding some true challenges that people go through and also not contributing to those, but actually solving a lot of those.
And I think that's one of the things that I think most people, I've been in the supplement industry so long that to me, it's just like, oh, okay, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Right. And when I am in stores, when I do my seminars and lectures, when I travel and speak, I'm always like, oh, okay, people don't like, you always think everybody knows everything. And you're like, oh my God, no, people don't know this. Right. And they'll be like, well, is peanut butter a protein? I'm like, no, it has like a smidge of protein. That's not a certain like, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. We have to really understand when you have people who are not taught that. Right?
Mhm.
Like, so you have to really start the basics. And that's another reason why I really wanted to provide this, because I want people to really, really understand that if you can put all of this together, then that's when the magic happens. Because supplements are there to supplement you. They are
Mhm.
not there to fix, like, they can support you, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm an active believer in them. But at the same time, and the thoughts you think is the first one. And one of the reasons I put that as the first one was because, I worked with cognitive behavioral therapy when I worked through my eating disorder, and I use it on a day-to-day basis now. The thoughts you think will determine whether you're going to go to the gym or you're not, whether you're going to have a great day or not, whether you're going to move your body, whether you're going to eat well, all these different things really start with your head first. So addressing that first is one of the most important things that you can do, right? And then you trickle down the way with all the other ones, and then you add supplementation in the end.
100%. Yeah, it's that subconscious mind literally drives so much of our lives, and
Oh yeah.
unless we address that, really, we're just
Yeah,
going to continue down the same patterns of how we've been living. And so I love
exactly.
that, and that empowerment behind that, and educating people on everything that they're doing, not just blindly doing it, is so incredible. Because again, if you are just doing it haphazardly and you're just expecting these results, you do it full on for a month and then it doesn't quote work, then
Yeah.
you come down on yourself rather
Yeah.
than recognizing like, oh my gosh, I have the power to change my life in so many ways. I think that's absolutely incredible.
Well, it's been interesting too. I'll say as quickly as since putting the QR codes on, we actually have the return rate has dropped dramatically. And I
Mm,
think because there is this, we're giving you the tools. And so when somebody does, I mean, we have 100% money back guarantee. I would never want somebody to buy something and have it in their cupboard and be cursing me every time they open their cupboard. But at the same time, the question is, oh, did you scan the QR codes? Did you do the meal plans? Did you do the affirmations? Did you read the education component? Are you working out? Right? Because this is not a magic pill, right? And so in that, it holds a little bit of accountability to the person on the other end, the consumer buying the product, that we're giving them the tools, we're giving them everything they possibly could. And obviously, if not every product is for everybody, so of course we return stuff that doesn't work, but in that there's a little bit of onus on the consumer as well, that they have to step up and make some changes too.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely so important, and not just have this again, that expectation that someone's going to come fix you or something external is going to do it. It's an internal job, but it's just giving you the resources to do that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely love that. And for someone who is like doesn't even know where to start, maybe they're, listening to this and they're like, I want to make some changes, but I don't know where to go. Is there any way for them to really do some like in-depth understanding of themselves, like, okay, what maybe supplement would be right for me, or what path should I take with that?
I think the biggest thing, and I say this in my talk, the number one thing you can do, and I'm actually working on a seminar right now called Strong
Mhm.
Over Skinny, is to start working out. That is the
Mhm.
number one thing you can do. As much as I want people to buy my supplementation, my
Mhm.
supplements, if you can start, and I'm a big believer actually going to the gym. I think as women, it's really hard to train at home. I mean, I've been working out since I was 16, and during
Mhm.
COVID, I had a hard time training at home. There is
Mhm.
something about going somewhere, taking that time for yourself, which often women don't do, putting your mask on first before you give it to somebody else, taking that hour for yourself, going somewhere else, getting a workout in, taking some time. Or if you have to work out at home, by all means, I understand everybody has different circumstances, but really setting some time aside for yourself and lifting weights. That is, the more muscular you are, the longer you live. That is
Mhm.
science,
Mhm.
right? You want to look at mobility as you get older. You want to look at, dementia. You want to look at insulin resistance. You want to look at bone density, all of it,
Mhm.
lifting weights and
Mhm.
not doing these little pink weights, back and forth, but getting in there and pushing some heavy weight. I mean, when I do leg press, I press 390 pounds is what I start. And that's
Mhm.
on, the leg press. So I'm not
Mhm.
like doing,
Yeah.
I'm not
Mhm.
standing, but I'm,
Yep.
sitting, but still I'm doing
Mhm.
390 pounds and I do it just for 5 reps. So I'm
Mhm.
doing small, lower reps for 4 sets, but that's it. It doesn't take me long,
Mhm.
right? But I'm really big on pushing heavy weights around or lifting or pulling heavy weights around.
Mhm.
So for some people who maybe don't know what to do, I mean, we're going to be launching in January on our website. We're going to have you can click and get a muscle building program, also with a muscle building meal plan as well in our banner. But I would, if you can afford it, get a trainer, by 3 sessions or even 2 sessions. I want an upper body and a lower body workout, and then go use those for at least twice a week if you can, right? So upper, lower. Jumping on the spot is a great one too, to help with bone density. Even 20 jumps a day is a great
Mhm.
one. And then doing a little bit of cardio as well. So I think the big thing, because if you can start lifting, if you can start taking that time for yourself, you will start eating better. You
Mhm.
will start watching who you're hanging out with. It will change your mentality, right? And
Mhm.
that's because you're not going to go eat McDonald's and crappy food and then go to the gym. Most people won't, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
unless you're a guy really trying to build size, maybe. But
Mhm.
for most women, you're like, oh, okay, I'm taking this time. I'm gonna eat a little better. And you're
Mhm.
not gonna go and hang out and smoke with a bunch of people or go and drink all night with a bunch of people, because you have the gym the next morning, or you're eating better and you're taking, so that starts to shift the people that you're around. And in that, it also changes your mental space as well, right? I mean, it is shown that lifting weights helps with endorphins, helps with serotonin levels, which is kind of that happy hormone. So that's going to help how you feel day in and day out, right? Which is going to affect how you're thinking day in and day out. And then supplementation wise, if I was to give some suggestions, protein is one thing. So get a whey protein powder, because you want to be having at least 30 grams of protein per meal if you can. And that can be quite daunting for a lot of people. So just when you get your plate, protein first, vegetables, and then carbohydrates. I just tell people to visualize that. Vitamin D is a really big one that everybody should be taking vitamin D. Unless maybe you're in Florida, maybe not, but even that, I would probably still take a vitamin D anyway.
Yeah.
I'm up in Vancouver. We're cloudy here. Today we have some sunshine.
Yep.
But I usually take 5,000 IUs a day. I take a lot of vitamin D. And if I start to feel the sniffles, I bump it to 10. So vitamin D is actually, vitamin D deficiency, at least for Canadians, is our most deficient vitamin we have, right? Most deficient vitamin. And so in that, vitamin D is a big one. I really enjoy creatine monohydrate. It's something we've launched. We do have vitamin D coming out called Good Day Sunshine. Creatine monohydrate is another product we have. Creatine is the most studied supplement in the world, over 500 research papers. You want micronized creatine monohydrate. Blends really easy. I just had mine after my workout. That's really going to help preserve your muscle tissue, especially as we get older. And a big part of my conversation to women is, especially midlife, this is game time. Like 40s and 50s, this is no more messing around. Like the stuff we got away with in our 20s, we're not getting away with it anymore. I mean, I know that because my hangovers are not the same as they were when I was in my 20s. So, right. So it is really game time. And if you've been ignoring your health and putting it on the back burner, you need, and I'm telling you, if you're listening to this right now and you've been doing, this is your call to take time for yourself. Prioritize yourself, because if you don't, your 70s and your 80s are going to be really tough. And it's not about, and we're living longer than we've ever lived before. So your 80s and your 90s are going to be not a fun experience. And I know I am going to age powerfully. That's why I'm training the way I train. I eat the way I eat. I rest the way I rest. Everything for me now as a 50-year-old woman is looking at how I'm going to be when I am 70, 80, and 90. I also had my daughter at a later age, which many of us have. My mom had me when she was 20. So I get my mom 10 more years than my daughter will get me, right? When I'm 50, my mom is 75. When my daughter turns 55, I'm being 90. That's a big difference. So I better be the most vital 90-year-old, because I want to see her kids and her kids' grandkids, right? So there's so many factors for me that are motivating me for this, but I think it's just so essential that women and men, I'm not just include men. If you're a guy listening to this, then you need to do the same things as well, because it's equally as important.
Absolutely.
But especially when women go through menopause, especially as we start going through that transition and losing our estrogen, our hormone, we have hormonal chaos going on. It's even all the more important that we start putting our mask on first, taking care of ourselves, and really advocating for our own health and wellness, because our future self will be very, very, very glad we did.
100%. Yeah, you almost have to reverse engineer it and think
Yeah.
about what is the version of yourself in the future that you want to be. And I can very much testify for that. I used to work as a physical therapist in the geriatric population, and you would see exactly what you're talking about, 70, 80-year-olds who are struggling to stand up from a chair
Yes.
and have not lifted or done anything, maybe their entire life. And now
Yeah.
they're paying for it. And unfortunately, then also your mind goes, once your body goes, they kind of go
Yeah.
hand in hand. And you
100%.
would see it, and it's
It's
unfortunate.
scary. I mean, you lose, starting the age of 30, you lose 3 to 8% of your muscle tissue
Mhm.
per decade, right? So
Yeah.
after 60, it's even faster. The
Yep.
only thing for scarpenia, which is muscle wasting, the
Mhm.
only thing activity you can do to slow that progression down is to lift weights.
Mhm.
That is it. And it's funny because when I do my talks and I'm like, I'm like, raise your hand who doesn't work out. I'm like, my goal tonight is to have you leave and work out, because what I can tell you is 20 years from now, you'll look back, and as much as I want you to buy my supplements, you're going to look back and say, I listened to a girl speak in
Mhm.
Niagara Falls when I was,
Yep.
and be like, I started lifting weights. It was the best thing I ever did. And that's my mission, right?
100%.
So yes, I want to sell supplements, but my biggest motivating factor is to have women live their most incredible life they possibly can.
Mhm.
And that starts with taking care of ourselves first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And another thing going off of that is that your type 2 fibers, which are your fast twitch fibers,
Yes.
they decline significantly. So you talk about your
Yes.
reaction speed. If you get off balance, you can't even react quick enough. And so
100%.
that's another benefit of weightlifting is keeping your type 2 muscle fibers that are going to inevitably decline, but slowing that
Yes.
decline with that as well.
And jump training. I mean, research has now
Mhm.
shown, as I mentioned, 20
Yeah.
jumps, 10 to 20 jumps a day will help with bone density. So
Hmm.
once a week I do plyo training. I did it today, right? So
Hmm.
40 jump squats, 40, jump lunges, alternating, and then 40 skaters as well as what I do. And then I
Hmm.
do some abs in between. It's my kind of plyo day because I'm not jumping every single day. But what that does, not only for bone density, but when I say this to my dad, because my dad made crappy decisions in his 40s and 50s. So I
Hmm.
have a real life example is why I'm so passionate about this. He fell and he hit his whole face. My mom is very different. My mom made very different choices in her 40s and 50s, right? They're
Hmm.
not together. And so his whole face is messed up. But I'm like, Dad, even if you jump on the spot 10, 20 times, because what that
Hmm.
does, if we start now, that as you mentioned, if you're going to slip and fall, right? You can catch yourself a little bit better
Yeah.
because you've kind of done this jump training. You
Hmm.
break a hip in your 70s, 25% don't live past a year.
Hmm. Yep.
And 1 in 5 women develop osteoporosis. Only 1 in 20 men, which is still a high, but 1 in 20 men do. So we need to really be putting some of this stuff into play because what we need to recognize is we're not going to get out. We're not getting out of this alive. But
Hmm.
every day we're here, we're lucky enough to open our eyes and have another day that we can exist and have this glorious body that is trying its best to heal and do its best for us for the most part. So in that, we need to be able to give it the tools it needs to actually keep us alive and healthy and vital as long as possible.
100%. Yeah. And it's so easy to get stuck in that when things settle down trap or when this happens, then I'll start or the
Yeah.
next new year. And you cannot wait for those deadlines or those set points because it's now like every single day. And just like you mentioned, like doing those, even just short period of time, taking advantage of that and acknowledging that. And I think something anyone can do is just see if you can still skip. Some people
Yeah.
can't even skip. That's a good idea to see like, okay, I need to do something because I can't
Yeah.
skip anymore. I can't jump anymore. And now
Yeah.
at that point, you've got to really hustle to get some of that
100%.
back. Yeah, 100.
100%.
Yeah. For someone who's listening right now and is maybe has gone through so many different regimens and has, not been successful, what's something you could say to them that would help ignite that hope in them again? Because I think so many of us get in those patterns of like, okay, that didn't work. There's something wrong with me. And it's a belief that maybe we carry that continues on and it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. What could you say to somebody who maybe has gone through many different regimens and hasn't, quote, worked for them?
I guess, I mean, what I would really look at is what actually are you doing? I mean, I think that's
Hmm.
it's something I've met a lot of people that like, I eat healthy. And then when you pick their diet apart, you're like, okay, well, organic muffins are not healthy. Like that's not what health is. Just because it's organic doesn't mean you can
Hmm.
eat it. Just because it's an organic chip doesn't mean you can eat it.
Hmm.
So one of the things I recommend, and I'm not really big on tracking food, but I tell a lot of people to install the MyFitnessPal
Hmm.
and put the 30 grams of protein in there. If you're constipated, not going to the bathroom on a regular basis, put 25 grams of fiber in there. Because so many people are like, I take fiber. I'm like, you're not getting enough, right? So being able to calculate and really look and narrow it down a little bit can often be helpful. I think also women are stuck in a cardio bunny treadmill thing that they don't get off and they think they need to do hours of cardio. You do not want to do hours of cardio. I used to be a 2.5 hour a day cardio person back in the day. I do 30 minutes walking on an incline. That is it. I'm on my phone working for the most part. So I'm not killing myself doing it.
Hmm.
Because what I recognize is putting myself in that stress state, my cortisol level then rises even more. And then my
Hmm.
body, and then I'm not lifting heavy weights. Before I would do that and then not lift heavy weights. So I'm not
Hmm.
creating lean muscle tissue, right? So
Hmm.
I've changed the way I've trained dramatically in the past year. Walking on an incline of like at 8,
Hmm.
at a slow pace, lifting really heavy weights, doing some jump training. I do spin once a week, which I'm going to do tomorrow morning.
Hmm.
2 days upper, 2 days lower. Being really a little bit more calculated can be one of the things, but I think the other thing is women really have to step back and look at where they are in their life. If you are in midlife, if you are in your 40s to 50s, you would probably be in perimenopause at this point. Your progesterone levels are beginning to dissipate. Your estrogen can be possibly all over the place, which is going to affect how your body's responding to insulin. It's also going to affect how your muscles are responding. It's going to affect mentally. So giving yourself a little bit of grace there too, and then working with a practitioner, going in and having that conversation with your doctor. If you're in your early 40s, ask him what he knows about menopause. Ask him what your options are. Up here in BC, they've actually just passed in April 2025, all hormone replacement will be free for women in BC, which is remarkable, right?
Yeah.
So really asking your doctor, what are some of the strategies I can use to support myself as I get older? Estrogen is our life force. So if we're in middle age, and a lot of women, it's more so what I come across is these women who are like, nothing, my body's changed. I don't feel like myself anymore. I have this tire around my waist. Like the things I did before don't work anymore. And that's because your body is really recalibrating in a sense, right? And so in that, you have to start looking at things differently. You have to start training a little differently. And in that, getting support and talking to, if you can, have a practitioner to work with, to look at what else you can be doing in order to support yourself during this time, be it hormone replacement, be it more natural sources, whatever that is for you. But I think the first thing would be, for one, is to start kind of dialing it in and seeing and being a little more accountable. I think that's the one thing. You can say, I've done everything and it doesn't work. How long have you done it? Are you really doing everything? And I'm not asking you to be super restrictive or anything like that. I'm just saying that by having something that can track you a little bit more, you might be like, oh, okay. So when I'm making dinner, I'm actually eating like 3 plates of food as I make dinner. Right. So it's like, okay, because you're snacking and busy and, that kind of thing, or you're not eating all day long and then you're eating all night long. Right. So it's looking, maybe intermittent fasting is not for you. Maybe you should be eating regular meals, because then you're not going to, at the end of the day, put everything in the end of the day. And then looking at the training, shifting your training. Are you doing the exact same thing? What can you do differently to support your body? Are you lifting heavy weights? And then also working with a practitioner, especially if you're in that midlife time, going in and talking to a doctor and finding out what is the best course of action that works for you, that sits well with you. Right. And that's really important too, but making sure you have all the options on the table, because midlife is a very different thing opposed to if you're 20s and 30s and you're not getting the results you have. That's when I'd probably say, okay, let's really look at what you're doing, opposed to hormonal as much first. I'd really look at the nutrition you're eating and the movement you're doing.
Yeah, all great points there. I really appreciate you sharing all that, because it is that awareness. Sometimes we think we're aware, we're not really aware until maybe someone outside ourselves is really kind of allowing us to see it differently or have a different perspective. So I think that's absolutely crucial, and so many great points and suggestions for things you can start modifying in your life to make those changes. So, and of course, giving yourself grace in the process is absolutely essential.
100%.
It really is. And I think that's
100%.
yeah, it's like, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's one thing that so many of us struggle with, is that grace of like, I am, working hard, and to celebrate yourself and acknowledge those milestones that you are getting to in the process.
100%.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Aeryon. This has been such a great conversation, one that I think will really tremendously help people just see things differently. And for someone who wanted to connect with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, we're at aeryonwellness.com. So it's spelled a little different. It's AERYON wellness.com. We do ship into the States as well. We're on Amazon.com in the States, and then we also can ship orders down if there's different products you'd like to try. We're Aeryon Wellness on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and, and TikTok. And then my Instagram is Aeryon Bella Ashlie. So it's AERYON. Again, Bella Ashlie is mine.
Amazing. I'm going to put everything in the show notes. So if you're listening, definitely connect with Aeryon. I am so grateful for you being here today and for everything you shared. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for everyone who's tuned in today, and definitely connect with Aeryon and, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode.